We are joined by Pennsylvania Senate Majority Leader Joe Pittman. Senator, the state budget is due on June 30th. What's the status of the budget negotiations?
Well, right now, as of 10:30 on Tuesday morning, as we're taping this, budget negotiations are less than nowhere. We are stalled. We are stagnant. We have continued to say, as a Senate Republican majority, that we have two fundamental underpinnings to moving this process forward. One is the proper regulation of games of skill, and the other is figuring out what the true cost of our Medicaid expenses are. If we have to carry the number that the governor proposed, which is a $2 billion cost of carry increase in Medicaid, there is frankly no room for anything else in this budget. And so we have to get serious about understanding what these true costs are. And to make it clear, I'm not talking about cuts. I'm talking about restraining the growth of spending.
Now, in Washington, Republicans are proposing cuts to Medicaid that has not been approved yet. Is that a factor in these negotiations?
I can't deal in hypotheticals. At this point in time, the federal government in Washington, D.C. are going to do what they're going to do. And when they actually pass a piece of legislation and President Trump signs it into law, whatever that may be, we will deal with it and we will adapt accordingly.
How do you see the state government's financial situation?
We're in a very, very precarious fiscal situation, and that's part of the problem. I refer to this as a crisis. President Pro Tem Ward has referred to it as a crisis, and it is a crisis because we are spending $3 billion more this fiscal year than what we're bringing in revenue. And while we have a surplus and while we have a rainy day fund, those are all one-time dollars. And if we don't figure out how to start right-sizing our expenditures to match our revenues, we're going to have a fiscal calamity in a few short years.
Now, you mentioned skill games. Why is it important to regulate skill games?
Well, I think it's important to put a regulatory system in place on what, frankly, is gaming. We're seeing many casinos, parlors popping up all over this Commonwealth. They are gaming entities, and we need to make sure that gaming entities have a regulatory framework and have age-restricted environments. And I think that is critically important to the public safety of the communities that we represent.
Is this an issue where Senate Republicans and the governor are on the same page, or are there differences of opinion?
I think there are differences of opinion on how to do it, but I do believe that there is broad bipartisan consensus on the need to do it. But until we have the five parties, the four caucuses and the governor come together and try to figure out a path forward on that issue, we're going to have a hard time figuring out any path forward on this budget.
How much revenue is expected to be generated by skill games?
That's one of the challenges with this situation. We have no idea how many machines are even in the Commonwealth. So we have no understanding of what the universe is. What we do know is that we have thousands of machines out there that are operating in an open environment without any regulatory framework. And so it's hard to predict what the revenue could be generated from these machines. And frankly, from my vantage point, I'm less concerned about the revenue. I'm more concerned about the regulatory framework. But the revenue is a piece of this. We have gaming already in this Commonwealth, whether it's the lottery, whether it's casinos, and they pay taxes. And so there is something to be said for making sure that there's some degree of parity within all of the gaming offerings that are provided to the people of the Commonwealth.
Now, Spotlight PA has been reporting on the skill games issue, and one of the things that they've said is that PCN, one of the key companies, has for several years tried to pressure lawmakers to support regulation schemes it favors, and Senator Ward has publicly accused the skill game supporters of bullying. What has your experience been?
My experience has been that those who represent PCN are not interested in actually getting a productive product done.
Spotlight PA also reported that PCN is saying the Senate Republican leaders threatened the company's lobbying firms.
What we've been very clear about is whenever we have conversations about issues, we expect that those who represent an issue, any issue, presented to us in a factual, consistent manner that comes to the table with a desire to have a productive resolution to whatever the issue may be.
Now, another key issue that's being talked about in this budget is transportation funding, especially funding for transit agencies as well as for roads and bridge repairs. Where are the caucuses on these issues?
Well, we've been very clear that if we're doing something on transit, anything on transit, that there has to be like-kind consideration for transportation infrastructure. Now, my concern with transit is, at this moment, they have simply priced themselves out of the market. What they are asking for is something that we can't achieve given our fiscal restraints, particularly when you recognize that if we're going to do whatever number for transit, whatever that may be, that there has to be some reciprocation for infrastructure that basically doubles the request. So right now, transit's looking for almost $400 million. We don't have $800 million to put into transit and infrastructure, and that's the big challenge. And so right now, they're priced out of the market. They need to come back to the table. They need to demonstrate accountability. They need to demonstrate local share. They need to demonstrate that they're willing to participate in funding the services they receive. Keep in mind, the state taxpayer already provides nearly $1.5 billion to SEPTA every single year.
Do you think a deal on transportation will likely be in the budget?
I can't predict that. Right now, I'm not seeing a seriousness among the parties that are advocating for transit to come to the table and figure out a real solution.
Now, another issue that is part of the budget proposal, Governor Shapiro has proposed legalizing adult use of cannabis. Is that something that is being seriously considered in this budget process?
It is not. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the House Democrats took a very serious issue and sent us a very unserious proposal as it relates to legalizing and regulating recreational marijuana. And so they've taken the issue multiple steps back. I don't see any way that we come to a resolution on that issue, certainly this year.
Do you have a preferred process of legalizing marijuana?
Right now, I am focused on figuring out how to get through this budget and how to properly regulate games of skill. I think those are the two biggest issues in front of us. I have real concerns about recreational marijuana, and my concerns are basically rooted in the fact that the federal government still treats it as an illegal drug. And that makes it, in my opinion, very difficult for states to figure out how to regulate it. And we also have a medical marijuana program in this Commonwealth already, and I don't think it's well run. And so I'm not confident that we have the ability to run a regulated recreational marijuana product in this Commonwealth.
Now, another key issue that comes up year after year is education funding. What do you think are the key issues in education this year?
Well, keep in mind that we continue to invest more money into education while educating fewer students. So when you look at per pupil, how much we are investing in students, educational opportunities, it is growing exponentially. So we have to make sure that we're receiving, number one, a return on investment, but also our caucus considers it a real priority to empower parents. Parents have the ultimate responsibility for their children's education, which means that parents need to take responsibility for their children's education, and it means that parents should have options. And so we believe that parents should be afforded options and opportunities, and any way that we can help enhance those opportunities is something that we're very interested in.
What do you think is the best funding formula for funding education?
Well, there's 500 school districts in this Commonwealth, and the challenge is that each and every one of them have their own definition of what they think is the best formula.
Another issue that comes up is minimum wage. Do you see a minimum wage proposal making it through this process this year?
Here again, I don't understand why we're not focused on maximum wages. To us, maximum wage jobs are what's critical. Whether you talk about a minimum wage at $7.25 an hour or $15 an hour or anywhere in between, nobody can suggest that that is a living wage. Minimum wage was never designed to be a family-sustaining living wage. We need to realize that a living wage is well north of $15 an hour. And so we have said very clearly that we're open to some sort of compromise on minimum wage, but we can't go from 7.25 to 15 in an instant, because there are areas of this Commonwealth, particularly rural communities, where there are still important jobs, part-time jobs oftentimes, that are offered at $8, $9, $10, $11 an hour. And we have to recognize and appreciate that.
What's the state of the rainy day fund, and how important is it to keep putting money in there?
The rainy day fund is absolutely critical. We've built that up for an express purpose, and that is to protect the taxpayer. And we also see real benefits from the rainy day fund as it relates to our credit ratings. We've been able to refinance bonds, save the taxpayers dollars on those refinancings. So accessing the rainy day fund is certainly a last resort for us. We do not want to access it. It is there for a true rainy day. And while we have a fiscal crisis in front of us, we have the opportunity to correct it before it's too late. And I think the biggest part of this budget, this fiscal year, is figuring out how to rebalance our revenues and our expenses. It's not going to all happen in 1 year, but we need to make that a focus, and we need to try to make that happen over the next couple of years.
How would you assess the relationship between Democratic caucuses and the governor and the Republicans during this budget process?
Well, we have two different visions for the future of the Commonwealth. We as Senate Republicans believe in the promise of Pennsylvania, and everything that we do in our agenda is about unleashing the promise of Pennsylvania. But we also realize that our electoral mandate is matched with the electoral mandate of the House Democrat majority and the electoral mandate of the Democrat governor. And we have to reconcile our differences. I think we have demonstrated over the last 2 years that we figure out a way to reconcile differences, do positive work for the people of Pennsylvania, regardless of their party affiliation. And I'm sure, while the current conversations are quite bumpy at this very moment, and they may change by the hour, but at this very moment, they're quite bumpy, we will figure out a path forward and try to deliver the best product we can for the people of Pennsylvania.
We've been speaking with Senate Majority Leader Joe Pittman. Senator, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it.